we straight chillin', serial killing, pre-cold villains on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star rated from the floor to the ceiling. If you catch a 1-star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ on the ones and twos by the name Beelzebub, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all over two, and prepare to hear the legend of the straight chilling crew.
What up, nerds, and welcome to another Bird Law episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name's Bob. I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode 420, Smoke 'em If You Got 'em, recorded Sunday, March 19th, 2023. The show's dropping April 26th. We're recording in advance tonight. Before we get into the review, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got your boy, Randy Z. What's up, man?
Good evening.
How do, my good fellow? Yes.
The jowls are flapping tonight, I hear.
I have tales of tension for you this evening.
It's just fueled by red meat. Just fucking
red
that's
face.
it. Red face. Oh boy. Last but not least, calling in from South Korea, we got your boy Soju. What's up, man?
Oh, what up, bitch, you boy? It's the end of the world as we know it, Stains. I need a little
Apocalyptic
more
Stains.
Irish accent on that, maybe. A little drunker.
It's just far too sober.
I feel fine.
It is 8
You're
a.m.,
drunk.
so, you know.
Tight. Pour a little soju over your cereal there, over your Cheerios, your corn puffs, your CT Crunch. And then
We don't have
drink down
corn
some,
over here in Korea, Bob. Okay,
That's
thanks.
right.
Thanks for pointing that.
Meanwhile, I'm bathing in it.
Bathing in
Stateside.
those corn puffs.
Bathing in the corn. That's the weird sequel to Children of Corn, Bathing in the Corn. We are talking about a classic tonight. We've been trying to sprinkle in some more classics in our repertoire. This is actually the first Hitchcock movie we've ever discussed on the show. The Birds from 1963. I think
we did
correct.
Strangers on a Train.
Strangers on a
The
Train.
second
Yeah.
Hitchcock
Okay.
movie
Come
we've
on,
ever
Bob.
reviewed
Come
on the show.
on now.
That's right.
There's probably a third. What are we doing? We can't.
I've done some
The
guest spots with
second.
Hitchcock films, but yeah.
You have, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you
that
know,
sounds cool.
I'm a little bit of an expert.
Very impressed.
Nice. Well done. Well played. So yeah, we're talking about The Birds tonight, so get ready for that. Before we get into it, let's tackle a little bit of housekeeping real quick. We do have our May poll currently posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're talking about this May. So this is going to be the last week for you to vote in the May poll, which is actually Juice's takeover month. Since we're recording in advance, we don't know what the numbers are looking like. But Juice, why don't you tell the people what your takeover month is?
Yeah, so
What it
my
is.
takeover month is Let's Kill the Beast. So I usually kind of, I'm a little highbrow with my picks on the takeover months, but I
Ease
just-
out, motherfucker.
I decided to let loose this year.
Let loose.
And I wanted to pick some movies. I really wanted to pick Underworld and was trying to fit it in a couple different votes. So the
Nice.
one I
Oh no, not again.
Yeah, the one I ended up with was kind of like movies where some kind of creatures are being hunted. And so the 3 films that I picked were Underworld from 2003, where the vampires are hunting the Lycans, Troll Hunter from 2010, where obviously the trolls are being hunted, and Reign of Fire from 2000 Deuce, where dragons are being hunted. That's
Ooh.
yeah. So yeah, that's my takeover this month.
Thanks for keeping it lowbrow for us,
Yeah.
Juice.
Thanks
we really
for slumming
appreciate
it with
that.
us dullards.
Yeah, I mean, you guys.
It takes a lot for me to want to pull my finger out of my ass and pay attention.
I'm just
just
saying I
believe
hold
it
myself to a
firmly.
higher caliber. That's all, That's all I'm
Fingerless
saying.
ass soju over here. Eyebrow motherfucker. Get your votes in before the end of the month. We'll see what we're talking about this May. What beast are we killing? We probably just dropped an episode over on Patreon for the mini cast. I don't know what it is yet because we're recording in advance. But we've got damn near 100 over there now. So if you support us at the $10 level or above, you get a chance to listen to all those Patreon exclusive episodes. Some of the earlier ones that I think most people probably haven't listened to. Actually, the very first one is something that Justin recorded all his own. He called it a short stain, in which he drank soju and bitched further about Halloween 2018.
That was the beginning.
That was where it started.
5 years
Neither
strong.
short stain.
No
Damn.
finger in my ass.
When I sound like an old middle-aged smoker woman.
That's
on a drunken
that's just what you
evening,
sound
you
like.
could be forgiven for making the mistake.
Who's serving up sloppy joes, extra sloppy.
Extra sloppy. Lady, you're scaring us. So check that out. We also got some other pretty solid episodes up there. We got a review for Pig, the Nick Cage movie. Teton, we got a review up for that. I also discussed the entirety of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
Okay, that's a good one, yeah.
Juice and I talk about the entire Friday the 13th franchise as
Did
well.
we? Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's a
right
lot
on.
of good shit on there. Scroll back through those and listen to whatever we just dropped to because it's probably dope.
Damn, I
think
forgot
that's
all
all.
about that. Ooh.
Dude, I mean, we're pushing 100 on freaking mini.
I guess we've been doing it for 5 years, so I guess that's reasonable. If I was recording in
That's-
2018 about
Yeah.
It's
nuts.
more than reasonable. You should be doing a lot more. Okay,
yeah,
get
which
on it.
I guess tracks because that would have been the end of 2018. If we released 2 a month, then yeah, okay, that tracks.
Yeah. Math, whatever.
Whatever.
That's all we got going on over at Patreon. Juice, you got some YouTube shit. What's going on?
Yeah, so we're trying to do some quick maths and scheduling, but if this is the last week of April, then this past Monday, I would have dropped the latest Creature Comforts episode, which I just recorded yesterday with
Whoa!
yeah, what time? What is it? With Caitlin from over at Plug It Up. We were talking about the butterfly effect from 2004 with your boy Ashton Kutcher.
Ashton
butter.
Kutcher.
Yeah, Mr. Kutcher himself. And yeah, so that was a lot of fun, mainly just because I got to talk one-on-one with Caitlin, which was a blast, of course, as you can imagine. So yeah, check that out over on YouTube. That's episode number 7. So cranking those along. We'll be at 100 soon enough. So,
Ooh,
well
starting
on
to get
our
to be
way.
long stains.
So yeah, check that out over on YouTube. And probably at some point you've watched our Tiki video 100 times. I'm sure you have on Evil Dead. So check that out again one more time.
If you haven't, then get to work. We need the interactions. Thank you.
Check out our Evil Dead Tiki video. Pour yourself a Tiki fuck and enjoy.
Yeah, I'm assuming that by this
Fuck.
time you're listening to this, that's our first video to hit 1 million views. So thank you for that. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
guys. Thank you for
We're
that.
all really grateful that we could afford to quit our jobs.
Yeah.
Full time.
Yeah, so
It's
really
been
appreciate
great.
that. Yeah.
Thank you all.
The Academy Award was too much, I gotta say. They didn't need that.
For the
Save
Tiki
that
fuck.
for somebody who.
Fuck
I know the
video.
cinematography was on point. And,
See, boys, the rum will set you free.
Mhm, the pussers
Tiki
from
fuck.
only the pussers.
Not in the Tiki
Jesus
fuck.
Christ.
That's
That's
just
I'm not
act- that's
fucking
just a
around.
rum. Yeah. That's what it's called.
That's what
sick. I want to throw up.
Rainey, do you have anything that's coming out in like
No,
16 years
I
or
don't know,
something?
maybe.
Okay.
I'm sure
Great.
there will be something along my lifetime that I will have to promote, but I'm not going to figure out what it is now. What am I, a
All
professional?
right, fantastic.
Oh yeah, I want to shout
Yep.
out. I had a recent guest appearance as well. I was on the latest season of American Horror Story, so go ahead and check
Oh
that
yeah,
out. You
that
know,
came out in
yeah,
April for
yeah.
sure. Check that out. Yeah, they're
Go-
celebrating Walpurgis Night.
Yeah.
They needed a replacement for
totally.
Billy Eichner, and they were
Fucking
like,
A.
"Get Soju on the horn."
Oh
We're
yeah, and
filming
also
in Seoul. Call Soju. I'm the guy
thanks
they
to
go to.
everybody who hung out for Joe Bob on the 21st, which I think is definitely something that I've done.
Oh yeah, I'm
For sure,
sure
most
you did
likely.
that, Bob.
You should go ahead and apologize for
Okay.
falling asleep.
I'm sure it was great. We all had a great time, and everybody loved it, and it was great. Thank you.
The 21st,
Um,
that means Randy's already walking around Seoul with Soju, Bob. You're
Oh,
just
yeah.
sitting in your
I've already
house
had my
alone
kidney
watching Joe
stolen and
Bob.
found myself
I'm
in an ice bath.
because Randy lives in Jacksonville, anyways. Now I'm alone. Randy's nuts, strolling around Seoul, baby.
Mhm.
All right, I think our house is clean.
I think so too.
This house is clean.
All right, let's get into the main event. We're talking about the birds, and we're kicking it off
Front
with the back
door.
of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
Bob, do you know
Hey.
someone's at your front door?
I know that, but you don't have
Bob's
to
about
say
to
it
get
on the show.
myrtleized.
Oh, we do.
Oh God, it's a bird.
Tell your house to shut the fuck up.
My house is sentient. It's
Rob's.
weird.
It's run by Chat GPT, I assume.
Speak English, Doc. We ain't scientists.
Oh, the
Bob,
bird. Fuck.
Bob, do you have this box?
I got it. I got
Is-
this box.
Is it steel,
Nah, it's stupid
aka
cardboard.
aluminum?
Oh,
It's
man.
stupid.
That's not gonna withstand the apocalypse.
I know. The bird apocalypse. They're gonna peck through this.
It's
with
just gonna
great
burn right
ease.
up in the nuclear fires, Bob.
Unlike my body. The nuclear fires. Oh man, we're talking about the birds from 1963. This is rated PG-13 with a runtime of 1 hour and 59 minutes. This was directed by your boy Alfred Hitchcock. It was based on a book by the same name, written by Daphne du Maurier. Screenplay was adapted by Evan Hunter. It stars Rod Taylor, Tippi Hedren, Jessica Tandy, Suzanne Pleshette, Veronica Cartwright, some other folks. A whole fucking pile of birds, that's for sure. Plot synopsis brought to you by IMDb is as follows. A wealthy San Francisco socialite pursues a potential boyfriend to a small Northern California town that slowly takes a turn for the bizarre when birds of all kinds suddenly begin to attack. Gentlemen, had you seen this movie before, and would you recommend people check it out? Randeezy, why don't you kick us off?
Yes, indeed. This Hitchcock was a pretty hot commodity in my house growing up. My sister and my mom were both like pretty obsessed, and that rubbed off on me a little bit. So yeah, and you know, kind of the top end of his work is like this and Rear Window, the stuff that's like easiest for a parent to say, yeah, okay, kid who is 8, you can watch this. So yeah, I had seen this. I couldn't tell you how many times, but I think it's might be in the double digits. It's been a long time since I've seen it last though. And yeah, I would recommend it, of course. You know, personal life notwithstanding, and I'm sure we'll touch on that a little more. Hitchcock's films are pretty well venerated, and for good reason, I would say. I think it's an easy recommend.
Right on, Juice. What about you?
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident I'd seen this as a kid when someone like my grandfather or something was watching it, but I don't think I'd ever sat down and watched it fully as an adult, and you know, like considered it as a film. So this was a pretty interesting watch for me. I like Hitchcock films generally. This one, it's got the classic status, so I would say check it out for that. But also I felt like it was quite dated and a little harder to get past some of the datedness than other Hitchcock films, in my opinion. Like some of like the effects and stuff that are going on were hard to just kind of overlook in this one. So this one's definitely dated, and I don't know if it holds up quite to its reputation. But it's still, definitely an interesting watch and an interesting film regardless. So yeah, I'm a medium recommend. Bob, how about you? Would you recommend people check out The Birds?
Well, I think this was the first time I'd ever watched this movie all the way through. Was for this show.
Oh, okay.
I'd seen bits and pieces of it as a kid. I remember distinctly being somewhat scared by it because my parents had it on, and I remember, the phone booth situation pretty specifically. And so yeah, this was the first time watching it all the way through, and I don't know that I like it very much, honestly. But I would still recommend it because it is definitely like a classic horror movie. It's like a pillar, Animals Gone Wild, or monster movie, and I think it has great influence in what came after. So I think it's definitely worth checking out for sure. But I don't know that I enjoyed it that much. So I guess that would be a medium recommend for me as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get into all the ins and outs of The Birds, but we are going to spoil the shit out of this movie. If you haven't seen it, here comes your warning.
Spoiler warning.
Bob, do you have this plot synopsis?
Oh, I got it. I got it all
All
typed
right.
out. It's a weird little story. I'll be honest.
It is. I was pretty surprised. I hope you've typed out all the dialogue.
I have.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you have 2 hours, because
I do.
Here we go.
Ah, yes.
Jesus
The opening
Christ.
dialogue. All right.
Fantastic. All right, here she goes. Socialite Melanie Daniels runs into lawyer Mitch Brenner at a local pet shop. He recognizes her from a previous court appearance pertaining to a practical joke gone too far. He pretends to mistake her for an employee of the shop, and she rolls with it, but we quickly learn she knows nothing about birds. Mitch wants to buy 2 lovebirds for his little sister Kathy's birthday, but they don't have any. Melanie, now interested in Mitch, orders lovebirds and drives them to Bodega Bay, where Mitch is staying at his mother's house with his little sister. Once arriving, Melanie talks with Annie, the local school teacher, to find out the name of Mitch's sister so she can write her a birthday card. Melanie also finds out Mitch used to date Annie, but she ended it due to his overbearing mother. Annie ended up moving to Bodega Bay anyways to be near Mitch. Melanie ends up renting a boat to take across the bay to Mitch's house, as it was the best way to remain unseen. She lets herself into the house and leaves the birds and the birthday card. As she's leaving, Mitch sees her and drives around the bay to help her off the boat at the dock. As he does, a bird swoops down and cuts the top of Melanie's head. Mitch tends to her wound in a local diner, and his mother, Lydia, is introduced. Melanie lies and says she's staying with her old friend Annie, and Mitch invites her over for dinner. Melanie goes to Annie and asks to stay with her because she's renting a room. She says yes. Lydia disapproves of Melanie, as she has a reputation of being a floozy, according to the local tabloids. Mitch then invites Melanie to Kathy's party the next day. She agrees to go. Some children are attacked at the party and injured by seagulls. Later that day, hundreds of sparrows swarm the house and fly through the chimney. The next day, Lydia drives to a friend's house and finds him dead with his eyes pecked out. Lydia becomes very worried for Kathy's safety, and Melanie offers to go get her from school. While there, hundreds of crows swarm the school. The kids run outside and get attacked. Melanie and Kathy hide in the car, and Mitch then meets them at the diner. And we see a man pumping gas out the window of the diner. He gets attacked by birds. Gasoline spews down the street, and another man drops a match, blowing up his vehicle and the gas pump, causing quite a scene. Melanie and several others run out to help and get attacked by birds. Melanie hides in a phone booth, and Mitch helps her. Mitch and Melanie then go to Annie's house to pick up Kathy, and they find Annie dead outside. That night, Melanie, Mitch, Kathy, and Lydia barricade themselves in the Brenner house. They get attacked by waves of birds that almost break through. During a lull, Melanie walks upstairs to investigate a noise and enters a room that the birds have punched a large hole through the ceiling. She gets attacked, and Mitch pulls her out of the room. Mitch now wants to drive to San Francisco and take her to a hospital. He quietly gets the car as the house is now surrounded by like thousands of birds. Melanie and the Brenners grab the lovebirds, get in the car, and slowly drive on out of town to San Francisco. Roll them credits.
Whoa.
There you
All
go.
right.
The birds.
Spoiled.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie. There were like many a time I was watching this film and like just laughing.
Sure.
Like laughing
Yeah.
my ass off.
Oh, damn.
The dialogue and the choices are kind of wild for the first like hour or so of the movie
Yeah,
before
about an
the
hour,
birds really start flying and attacking. It's like the level of like stalking happening was just kind of blowing my mind. I was like, this
Oh, for
woman,
Melanie?
yeah, this woman
Yeah.
is bold as fuck. Like going way out of her way to find this dude and just
Yeah.
like walking up into his fucking house and like he's
Dude.
chill with it. He's down.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty funny. I mean, what I got out of this time, here's something like I was watching this time around with sort of a knowledge that I don't usually go into this movie with. I don't really think about that closely because I was coming in critically. I was like, okay, I know about this movie is that it's not my favorite Hitchcock movie.
Mhm.
And that's largely because it seems like, what's really like, it seems like only one thing is really happening. And so I was really looking and trying to pay attention to and that it takes a long time to get there. So I was really trying to pay attention to that first chunk a lot more. And I got a lot more out of it when I was paying more, like when I was really putting the effort into like sort of getting there. And I totally laugh at that, Bob. Like that Melanie is like stalking him or whatever is absolutely true. And it's just like a show of frivolity of her character and like how she is like, I really like kind of like the characterizations they build around these characters because she is not anyway particularly likable at first. She's not a likable protagonist at first. She's kind of like at best a prankster who has enough money to get away with it sort of thing. And he kind of like negs her a little bit to start their relationship. And like the mom is very cold. But the performance is so good. I don't know. There's something interesting going on, I think, in just about every part of this movie, but it's not really always, it's very rarely right at the surface. The only time it's at the surface is when there's actual action happening. I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know.
So actually, Andy was popping a lot into my mind when I was watching this film because I was going back to when we were covering The Fly, another one of our classics that we were trying to work in. And at the time, that was kind of like a rich family who lived in Canada, and like their actions with each other like just felt like very superficial and felt like, almost like I Love Lucy type of superficial interaction and stuff.
Hey, now.
And yeah, well, I was
Let's
just
not
like,
besmirch Lucy.
well, I was just kind of feeling that in this film where you're right. None of the people are particularly likable. And also on top of that, they're just kind of these like rich, smug assholes who just are like seem so fucking full of themselves and are doing the wildest shit that doesn't really make sense to me. And we're building up these like dialogues that are like pretty like well written, to be fair, and like pretty well performed, but in a way that's like not, but also in a way that's not realistic. Like nobody's gonna be talking to each other like that. It's just hard to kind of like buy into or get past like what's going on. That's just how I was kind of feeling about this whole first hour. And they like sit in it for a long time.
They do. Our two main characters, Mitch and Melanie, are like, Melanie is she's the daughter of a dude who owns a newspaper, and she's just wealthy because of that. And there was like a tabloid story of her like going around Paris and getting naked and jumping in a fountain or something like that. And then Mitch, we see, who is a wealthy lawyer, and his mother has a large house on the side of this bay, and he's extremely like cocky and seems kind of self-involved. And so they're both just like independently wealthy and like running around town, like doing these crazy things with each other. And they just feel difficult to identify with. And at a certain point, the birds start attacking, and like I don't really fear for their safety in any way. I was reading like one review of this movie where somebody said like because of these characters and the way they're written, you start to like identify with the birds, and I was like, well, I didn't identify with the
What?
birds at all.
No.
Like, I didn't really identify
That's
with
asinine to me.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't know who you're rooting for. Yeah, the mother is like
These things are attacking children. I mean, you don't have to have much empathy in your soul to be like, oh, these are the bad guys.
Sure. I feel like when I was watching this, the way these female characters are written, everybody is obsessed with Mitch, including his mother. Like his mother is absolutely obsessed with him. Annie, the poor school teacher who he broke up with her, she broke up with him, but she's still like around because she just wants to see him. And then Melanie is like literally stalking the shit out of him. Like everybody's just fucking obsessed with this dude, and it feels like cringy and weird.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't
It
like
does, but
it.
Yeah, I don't either.
I see that point of view, but like to me, what's happening that's interesting with all that is that you grow because of this horrible thing that's happened. I do grow to be in their corner, like throughout the course of the movie, and I start to really relate to these people that I otherwise didn't. And there's some sort of like the whole buildup is centered around the will they, won't they, or sexual tension between those two characters, and seeing, like you said, how people are obsessed with them, but they give like proper pathos to each of those characters. Like I was really impressed this time in a way I hadn't been before with Jessica Tandy's role as the mom, when she's doing that monologue with Melanie and she's like in bed after having found a man's eyeballs pecked out. That's a really fun and like good performance, and it explains to some extent, like with a good psychological bent, why she feels the way she does about her son. She's not an idiot. She knows herself well enough to know that what she's doing, and she is actively tries not to, but like somehow she's like her. I think that Mitch, right?
Yeah, Mitch.
Mitch is ultimately just doing whatever the fuck he wants, and but to somebody like Annie, who got rebuked by him, she blames the mother, and it's easy to see why, because like it's what's wrong with that is that it's kind of a misogynistic take. Do you know what I mean? Like there's kind of a these women are crazy, and like this guy's like a stalwart man about town. He's always like got one ahead of her, even as a prankster. He's a one ahead of her all the time. And that's the part that kind of like feels really dated to me. But I really like the psychological bent. I try and put myself in that time and that era. And to have this woman who's like the most scandalous thing in the world is that she does these little pranks on people and shit. Like it just seems kind of like quaint looking at it that way. And it also like they're not very likable to begin with, but you grow to like them. And I think that that's a testament to how well the tension is ratcheted up. And like because the first hour is so quiet and so demure, and it doesn't have any music, the amount of silence in this movie is crazy. And like birds are kind of like hinted at. You can hear them in the audio mixing in this is fucking incredible. And it like because of like all these things, you're focused in on these characters who are doing this like melodrama thing, and then the shit hits the fan and they're having to deal with it. I don't know. I think it's pretty compelling at that point.
The thing is though, I never really kind of grew to like them, because this does have a very misogynistic
you root
take.
For them as
I mean, in a just like basic survival, like mostly out of the curiosity of like, how are you going to deal with this situation? Not necessarily in like, go, because in talking to the point of like misogyny and like their take is, we're introduced to this woman who kind of has this like take charge attitude. I'm going to go all the way, out of my way to kind of do these things. But like when shit actually goes down, all the women like just piss me the fuck off, because they're not doing shit except like even the very last scene where the little girl's like, Mitch, can we bring the lovebirds? They didn't hurt anybody. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like it just all of these
the symbol of hope.
All of these decisions and like the thing, or like even when she finally, it's a cool scene where she finally goes into that room with all the birds, but like their decisions are so fucking stupid that I'm
I
just
agree.
like pissed off about it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man,
So-
they're really underselling these characters, and Mitch is
That's-
the only fucking one who can do anything.
He's
I
the
think
get
Mitch
shit
is
done
kind
piece,
of-
and I think that's a product of its time for sure.
I think Mitch is kind of a fucking idiot too, to be honest with you. But
Well, yeah.
that end scene specifically does stand out because they need to get her in the room. And like there's really no sensical way to do that. So like she opens the door, sees the hole, just walks into the room and then shines a light in there and then sees all the birds and then falls back into the door. And the thing that like I really didn't like about that scene is like when she's being attacked like by hundreds of birds, her dialogue is like, "Oh, Mitch."
Yeah,
It's like,
Yeah.
that's-
it's like
There's
sensual.
It is
Yeah.
like that, and I think that's a byproduct of our director, who
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
famously a bit of a
probably.
creep and
Yeah.
a bit of a misogynist himself. So I mean, yeah, I think that's in the DNA of it for sure. You kind of like, to me, it's a matter of like looking past that and seeing the pathos given by the performers in the role given, and I think there's a lot of that. I think there's
Yeah.
a good amount of
It's
that.
an
I really
effective
liked
scene.
it
I don't want to
It
shit on it
is.
totally.
Yeah.
Like, and so
It's
I mean,
such
this
a
movie,
scary scene to me. Like
it's
I don't
it's
know.
fucking terrifying. I can't imagine having hundreds of birds fly at my ass. Like that would be
Yeah,
terrifying.
not my ass.
Not my ass. And I
Get
do-
away from my ass, birds!
Some of the effects.
Oh, I forgot I
Oh my
put the
God.
fish up there. Shit.
That's where I store my.
Oh my smoked herring supply. Oh god.
Some of the effects in this movie do look like a little dated, like for
Oof.
sure.
Dude.
But I think I still think like if you put yourself, so this movie's 60 years old this year,
Right.
which is one of
Yeah.
the main reasons we kind of wanted to talk about it. So if you think about seeing this 60 years ago in like a drive-in or whatever, like
Sure.
I'm sure it blew your shorts clean off. So like, and I still think it looks pretty neat today. Like not amazing, but pretty good. Like better than a lot of CGI
mean,
stuff.
there's a-
that we
Oh
still
yeah,
get.
yeah.
There's a
It
reason
still
that this
looks
is-
better than fucking Birdemic.
It
Oh,
does.
well, yeah, that's
It does.
it's not even. Don't
I
even bring that
know.
movie up right now. But like the effects in this, like they do look dated, but that's because it's been 60 years purely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If
sure.
you watch this in theaters the day that it came out, this was full scale cutting edge technology.
I'm
and people
sure,
saw
yeah.
it that way. So like I don't always like really go to bat for that, but like this movie was, the amount of influence it had because of specifically the effects
Yeah.
is part of the reason it's a huge classic.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
so important to
And the
film's repertoire.
And the thing
The
is
reputation
there
of it.
are some really effective scenes that stick with you from the aspect of the concept. So, the outside of the schoolhouse, all those fucking birds. Of course, the ending scene.
Tickety dow dow
Ye-
dow.
Yeah, oh my
Dude,
God, dude.
even-
Holy God.
Even that song is like a weird misogynistic thing about women who don't brush their hair but once a year and refuse to sweep the floor and shit. I was like, what's going on with this movie? What's
I didn't
happening
look
here?
that up. That's interesting.
Yeah,
mean,
and then
If you listen to them sing, that's what they say. Sorry, go ahead.
well, yeah. So the ending scene where they go out and they're getting to the car and like all the fucking birds are there. Obviously, the scene where she goes into the bedroom and like all the fucking birds. So when like it's so when they present that aspect of it, it holds up well and it psychologically like really works, because then you're like, yeah, fuck, I'm not scared of birds, but I would be if there were literally hundreds outside my door. But on the flip side, this scene, and this kind of adds to the unrealistic, I can't get past like, what the fuck are these people doing when they're like, okay, kids, we can see hundreds of birds out there. Let's just run our asses
Go
off.
outside.
So already I'm like, oh God, okay. And then that scene where there's like a bird on some kid's shoulder and stuff, I was like busting a gut. That shit was crack. That shit looks so dumb. That shit looks
Dude.
so fucking dumb.
I don't know.
Oh
I
my
had buy-in.
God.
That movie earned my buy-in with that stuff, and I think a lot of I've already mentioned this, but I think a lot of it has to do with the audio mixing, because the song, as annoying as it is, it's this weird eerie sounding thing in silence, set in silence, as you know that the birds are amassing, and then it cuts away from those birds and you get like a few extra seconds of her smoking her cigarette or whatever before you see, oh shit, they're all
Mhm.
fucking there. So like, and then I don't know, I guess I have a tendency to want to look the other way with like logic like, oh, okay, kids, we're gonna slowly walk out and then run home. I think that's a dumb idea, but I also don't think that they know they're in a fucking horror movie. They think that there's
Yeah.
been a bird attack. So I don't know that it's necessarily the worst decision from that perspective, but us as viewers who know better and who have been like
Yeah.
given this foreboding scene for 10
Yeah.
minutes or whatever, maybe feel a little bit differently.
They
So,
just
yeah.
always fucking do that. Like even after several attacks, they're just like, let's walk down the fucking
go
street. Like,
outside.
yeah, when she discovers Catherine's body, like when they're going, it's like they never think like, let's like rip off this door and put it over our heads, or let's like carry a goddamn weapon, a stick that we can beat some fucking birds off. Like they're always just like,
Beat that bird off.
all right, let's go
Gotta
creeping
beat the
around
bird off.
outside in the open again. Let's do it again for the third time, for the fourth time. It's like, oh man, okay. Like I feel like there needs to be
when do they
some
do that
sort of
besides the
character
ending, though, after that?
progression. So
Like-
okay, so they do it. Okay, so they get attacked at the party first of all.
Right.
Okay, and like yeah, okay, we're still like not sure, but then the fucking birds fly into the house. Okay, and he still later on refuses to cover the goddamn chimney, and I'm like, he's like, I'll light the fire, whatever, and whatever. Then so they have the moment with the school scene for sure. Then they have a moment where they
At the diner.
at the
Did
diner
the
with
birds fly
with-
down the chimney before the school? I don't
yes,
know. Is
I
that
think-
Yeah.
Because then okay.
yeah.
That was after the party.
And
yeah.
then when they have to go get the little girl from Catherine's house, again, they're just like wandering around outside. And I'm just like, every time I'm just like, do something different. At this point, you've been attacked 3 to 4 times by masses of birds, and you're just strolling down the street.
There was another scene where Melanie's like, hey, we should get out of town. We should like leave for San Francisco. And Mitch is like, no, we got to stay for whatever reason. And which is dumb. It seemed like the right move to leave for sure. And then at the end, they do just get in the car and drive to San Francisco. I was like, well, why? It just felt like really anticlimactic for me at the end. I
Well,
will say the cinematography at the end is fucking top.
That's
I thought it
great.
was
It's
gorgeous.
fucking
Good
incredible.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's a fucking, I don't know, that ending is so great. And honestly, like I don't mind the lovebirds thing or anything, like the girl asking that. I don't know. I don't think that people thought in survivalist terms as much when like I don't think that movie people thought in those terms at that time, and the same level that we do. It was still more. That's kind of what's interesting about the beginning is this like it's the normal bubbling of overly polite society, and then it starts to bubble over. It's the mist. I mean, they had that whole fucking big scene on the diner that is just the mist basically. And it's like it's about that sort of like there's sexual tension, but they can't really talk about that. There's tension between mother and daughter. There's an Oedipal thing going on. There's all these little things going on, but nobody can really talk about it directly. Annie can't talk about how she feels about Mitch. Mitch can't talk about how he feels about Melanie. Melanie can't talk about how she feels about Mitch. None of these things can be talked about, and then this fucking act of God happens, and it just is like an outgrowth of that. It feels like almost. It feels like a natural conclusion to just denying basic nature. You know what I mean?
So I personally wish there was more moments like the one where they go back in the diner and the woman freaks out and she's like, you know, she's obviously in shock and she's just grasping at like what, and so she starts to blame her, like, you know, you brought this, what did you do? And she like kind of slaps her. Like I wish there were kind of moments like that, because there are some relatable moments in here where I thought like, wow, yeah, these feel finally like real people. Like when Catherine and Melanie have their is it Melanie? Yeah, have their discussion like in her house finally, when she's kind of like talking about the situation with Mitch, and I was like, okay, that's a little extreme. Maybe I stuck around this time to be around him, but it's at least relatable. Like, oh my God, you had your heart broken, you're like kind of hung up on this person and you're making like choices based around it. Like that's relatable. Or when the mom, you know, she breaks down, she says like, what happens when you rely on somebody for strength, you know, your whole life, and then that person's gone. And then that, you know, kind of explains the way she treats people surrounding Mitch, is because that's now her strength. Yeah. So like those moments make people feel real, but those moments unfortunately are few and far between. And I never feel like Mitch kind of gets that moment. I never
I agree
really
with that.
feel like Catherine kind of gets that moment. And so these two main characters who were supposed to be invested in for survival and for their like love interests and stuff like that, I never relate to them in any way because they're just
Wait.
rich, smug assholes who do things that don't make any sense to me.
Well, you said what when
Oh, did I say
Catherine doesn't
Catherine?
have a moment?
I
You
meant
mean Melanie?
Melanie. Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant
Okay.
Melanie.
Well, I think Melanie's moment is just fucking up so bad that she almost gets herself killed, basically. That scene of her walking, like trapping herself in the room.
Yeah.
And granted, that was a terrible decision, but like her whole characterization is about her making impulsive decisions in the moment. So I don't have a big problem with that. And I think that is her, like she doesn't come back. Our main character
Yeah.
is in a catatonic state for the rest of the film. And
Mhm.
Mitch, I think like we don't like Mitch, but I don't think that Hitchcock disliked Mitch. I think Hitchcock like that it was
I think
very
Hitchcock
much like
wanted to be Mitch.
Probably.
yeah, exactly. It's a wish fulfillment
Yeah.
character for a man who like loves early cinema and who
Yeah.
loves those kinds of stories. I think that's what's going on, and it's just our modern sensibilities rubbing against that, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
And I totally wish that he had had a moment where he had to reckon with something. Like for instance, I kind of the one thing, and I hesitate to like try and improve what's considered a classic. I'm not trying to say that this would
Do it.
necessarily be better, but I had this fun idea, like I think that other people must have thought of before because it's very obvious. At the very end, when he decides to let the lovebirds come along, like to me, the most dramatic way to end that is not just seeing them drive off, but like having the lovebirds essentially cause
crazy.
them to be attacked.
So
Like,
I
to start
thought,
like
Yeah.
losing their mind, and they would get attacked, and that would be like
yeah.
nature. You can't fight nature. Nature wins. Like that could be the ultimate message, and I think that would have been just as, if not more strong, of a reason to have those lovebirds in there. Besides the obvious, like, oh, lovebirds, and that's not enough for me. If they really want to make that clinch, you make those birds their killer app that kills them.
Yeah, well, I thought that was going to be the thing because having not watched it since I was like a kid and having no, context for like what the story progression or anything like that, when she was like, "Can we bring the lovebirds?" and they had already mentioned like, "You caused this, you brought this with you, this started with you." And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to put these things in the car." And they've been like fucking chill the whole time. I was like, okay, this is going to be the thing that's going to get them killed. And I was super disappointed when that didn't happen because I was like, why? Then what the fuck is up with the lovebirds?
I think like Rob said earlier, you dropped that line where it's like it's a hope
Symbol of
survives
hope.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is a very like that's suitable for this movie made in this time again because it's about like there's some wish fulfillment fantasies, a happy ending, even though it's also a terrifyingly like creepy ending. It ends on a hopeful note. I think that maybe this movie came out maybe 20 years too early to really capitalize on the bleak ending. And that's, I think, unfortunate, even though I still love that final scene because like Rob said, it just looks so great.
And
it is very foreboding.
Yeah.
And like the silence of it, again, it's that crescendo through the movie. Every time the birds like really start attacking, it's this huge crescendo and there's like very little music in any part of it. It's just like the raw sounds of attack and of chaos breaking out. And then the movie ends on that we own this shit, we're the birds and we own this shit situation.
We run this shit, say the birds.
The birds won't even let Mitch put his hand down on a railing. They bite his ass. And it's still effective, even though I kind of wish it was a little more bleak to kind of sell home the nature versus polite society commentary that I want to be at the center of this film, and I think partially is.
There's sort of it is. This movie is very much like Mother Nature. Am I right? Like at the end of the day, you can be wealthy as fuck and like have no care in the world and run around doing whatever. But when nature decides to fuck you, like you're gonna get fucked.
Yeah.
But
hurricanes don't care how much money you make.
Yeah, they do like kind of safely, I guess, drive away at the end. They're not at least getting like swarmed by birds when they drive away. So there's an element of hope happening there. Like maybe our characters learned a lesson from this. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I haven't seen The Birds 2, which apparently is hot garbage. But
I've
I don't.
heard that it's quite bad.
It does feel a little like hollow at its core for a story, though. I wish there was a little more, to your point, Randy, like the missed conversations happening about like why the birds are attacking and what can we do to stop them, and get into who believes in God and is this the end times, and stuff like that would enhance the dialogue and the purpose of the story overall. It at the end of it, it does ring a little bit hollow. Other than like love prevails, I guess,
Yeah, and like I can see that point. And like in fairness, though, I think there is something interesting about like Melanie as this troublemaker character she's painted to be, who is ultimately like mostly doing harmless things or else being lied about because she's a rich socialite or whatever. I think there's something somewhat relatable to, not relatable, but understandable about that position. And to see her influence on the town and see people like directly blaming her. She's coming in because like Annie's their kid's teacher and their friend, and she's in love with Mitch. And here comes this hot to trot blonde socialite into town with lovebirds, scandalous, trying to steal away Annie's man. And like, I don't know, she's disrupting a small ecosystem in and of herself just by being there, and the way that she has to kind of protect herself through that. And then ultimately the entirety of humanity is rejected from that area of the world. I don't know. There's some sort of lyricism there that I'm not quite able to put into words. I like it a lot.
Yeah, there's I wanted to mention too, so there are some effective scenes with the birds, like okay, so the I think the first kind of big one is the guy in his room with his eyes pecked out and stuff like that. But on the flip side, when that bird knocks that motherfucker out who's pouring his gas, I lost it, because that dude, that's like, I know, I'm sure people have used that to kind of like parody that idea, but it's because it's so ridiculous. This one fucking bird swooping down and knocking the shit out of this dude.
That's what's so devious about it, though. Like the first bird always looks stupid. The first bird hit Melanie and nobody believed it. And then you have that lady that's like an ornithologist or whatever trying to tell everybody like, oh, that's impossible and all this shit.
Birds are beautiful.
Yeah, no, birds don't act that way and all this stuff. And of course she has to eat that shit later. I don't know. Like, and then I think it is kind of like silly to look at on its face to see a bird attack somebody, but it's when the swarming happens that actually causes the fear for me.
And see, that lady was, go ahead.
I was saying, in that same conversation, when she's like, birds don't act like that, I think she very quickly says like, oh, but something like that happened in Santa Cruz just last year. Like, well, what the fuck?
Where they flew, got confused because of the fog.
Because they're claiming attack and she's trying to refute attack specifically.
Well, yeah, that's the interesting aspect of it, because we do get like this little blip, and so it's hard, because when I'm thinking about like, okay, what's effective from like this as a horror film, then I go to scenes like, okay, them amassing outside the school, the scenes at the end with the house, and when all the sparrows flying through the chimney, like, okay, that's all very effective. But then when I'm like, what works on a kind of like psychological level or like a societal level, then that little diner thing is the only one that like really stands out, because you have this mix of people where like there's the one guy who's just drunk off his ass, but he's like, it's the end times. But then that kind of like, it kind of influences other people's thoughts, because at first the mom is like, shut your mouth, you're kind of scaring my kids. But then she takes on that role of like, you brought this kind of superstition. And then you have the lady who's like, kind of basing it in kind of rational thought and science of like, oh no, I study birds, and like they don't do that from a scientifical standpoint, like you must be mistaken, but to a fault, where like, instead of saying like, well, let me try to figure this out, I know a lot about birds, she just refutes it. But that's the only kind of like glimpse of that we get. And honestly, for as unlikable as some of these characters are, I wish more time was spent with stuff like that than showing fucking, we see the time that's spent showing Melanie go to a convenience store, call for a boat, drive up to a house, get on a boat, drive across the lake, go inside somebody's house, drop off some birds, get back in the boat. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm almost living this in real time. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think there's like too much of that shit and not enough
I
of
don't
the
agree.
like what's going on here.
See, I don't agree. I think
You
that in a
like
lot of movies,
watching Melanie like drive up to a fucking
I did.
house?
Yeah, I like the quietness of it. I like that it offsets the later action in this like singular, very myopic, very tiny story that we're following in, yeah, kind of close to real time ish feeling. And I used to not, when I was a kid, that was like the part I would like tune out because it felt boring. And I can understand people feeling that way, but for me, it's a necessary lull before the storm. And I think that it informs enough of these characters to give them some sort of starting pathos for me that's more than just banter. Like it's some banter, but it's also like this woman is really fucking doing this. Like, and her seeming like a stalker and acting crazy, you're supposed to feel that way about her. You're supposed to feel like that because that informs how the mother feels about her later and all these other things. I think that maybe you could tighten it up, but I don't particularly feel like I want an explanation or any extra exposition or anything like that. And in its place, if I was going to replace it with something, maybe a little more like discussion with the cops, because they do some of that too. Like I think there's more than like I think definitely the diner scene is like the biggest like social like commentary you'll find, the most obvious on those. But you also have police that don't believe them, like it's like just the way they have to interact and convince people that this is true. And you're really pulling for those people to take them seriously, and of course they don't because it's not logical. Like it's a push and pull throughout the movie. It's just that's when it comes to a head, because that's when shit really breaks down and a man is fucking ignited on fucking fire next to a like that shit's horrifying.
This shit
like,
cracked me up.
Really? That's just
Yes.
fucking like I don't.
Oh boy.
That looked pretty fucking good to me. Like I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That shit.
You
Even
could
if
put
I
like a
like
little
that.
soundtrack over that, like, but where
Well,
like
you can do that with damn near anything,
well,
man.
it's true, but a bird. Okay,
yeah,
so
if
the
you take it out of
situation is
context,
a bird
like,
swoops
yeah.
down, knocks a motherfucker out to where he's pouring gas that
That's not who I'm
nobody.
talking about.
See, yeah,
I'm talking about the guy who drops the cigarette butt or whatever.
I know,
or
so
like,
it
lights
leads up to that. I'm talking about the whole wacky situation. A bird fucking
Okay.
swoops down, knocks a motherfucker out to where he's just woo and pouring gas all over, and literally everybody just watches it fucking flow and flow and flow and flow and flow until some random ass motherfucker pops out, and everybody's fucking yelling at his mother, and he's like, "Well, bro!"
it's
like
it's
and
a
that
little-
shit
it's
cracked
not
me
a
up.
random
Yeah,
guy. I'm sorry, Bob. You go ahead.
I would say the whole setup of this is a little convenient, even though it's like a major set piece, and everything that goes into it is pretty cool looking at the end. But it did kind of crack me up when like more people run outside, and then the fire department rolls around with their truck, and then you see like their water hoses going all crazy too.
Dude, yeah.
It's just like it compounds and compounds, and it
that's
starts to
funnier
get
to
a
me.
little funny.
Yeah.
Like if you take any part of that out of context, yeah, I mean that's why like this movie is kind of a hard sell as a horror movie, is because birds aren't inherently scary.
Yeah.
Like my dad tells this story all the fucking time about going to a gas station, getting a thing of like grandma cookies or whatever, and then a bird just coming up and swooping them out of his hand in front of this. This guy's like, "Did that bird just take your cookies?" He's like, "Yeah, that bird just took my cookies." Like, it's funny. It's funny on its face, out of
Damn.
context, but within the context of a movie where, like you just said, we watched these birds wreak havoc. We've seen a man's eyes poked out at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think that it adds together. Like if you take it as the whole it was intended to be, I think it works. I don't know that the context free visual of it is it can definitely be funny. But like
Yeah.
taking it all in context, and I don't think people like just watch that. I don't think anybody notices the gas like leaking everywhere. And the guy who blows up was the guy who was gonna drive those kids and their mom away from there.
Oh
who
yeah,
was-
yeah.
So like,
Mhm.
and they're desperately trying to get him not to light his cigar, and of course he
Yeah.
does, and he blows up, and like that, he's just crumpling against his own car. I thought it was pretty effective and like kind of scary looking.
Nah, not
There's
me.
there's one sequence that's like kind of the opposite of everything we're talking about. It's extremely minimal, and you don't really see anything at all. That I thought was really, really well done. When they're in the house at the end of the movie, they've got a piece of plywood covering the front door, and we just see these tiny little pecks starting to come through the wood,
Mm.
and they like multiply and get a little deeper and a little deeper. I thought that was a really fantastic way of like building suspense, because you know they're going to burst through eventually, but the scary thing is what you don't see. You don't see like hundreds of slightly odd looking birds flying everywhere, which
Mhm.
worked for me. I thought that was great.
Me too. Yeah, and
More
that's
of
what
that
I
would have been
like.
cool.
Yeah, the like show don't tell, the implication of it, because like you can set up those scenes where like there's a shit ton of birds building up, and that actually made me tense, because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, if I'm walking, I'm not scared of birds, but if I'm walking by and there's 100 crows on the playground, I'm gonna be like, what, that's ominous, and then even when he's like reaching through the window and they're like pecking at his hands, I was like, oh fuck, I can imagine
That
that
was real pecking
well.
too.
Yeah,
That sucks.
yeah, it
Damn.
does, because I can imagine that. But then when you have to pull it off, when you're trying to kind of sell it, it's kind of like watching CGI from 2003 now, where like, ooh, woof, like I said, when the kids are running and they're trying to sell being scared because this like little thing is chilling on this kid's, like, it doesn't look good, and it takes me out of it. I want my mind to do the work, where your visuals can't. So give me like the little bit and let me build that tension in my imagination, or like even like the little pecks, or when they're flying in her face. Like, yeah, that's fine. Well, that sucks because they were real birds. That's why it looks good, which
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah,
Which
that does
sucks.
suck.
But still, that's what makes it more effective. And so when they can't pull that off and a bird's just swooping down, knocking a motherfucker out, or chase on this kid's shoulder and shit, I'm like, nah, that
See,
didn't do it for
it
me.
doesn't bother me, and it's so interesting to me that we are like diametrically opposed on this and The Fly, because like that's how I feel
Yeah.
about The Fly. I really
Yeah,
don't.
that's what I was
I
thinking.
can't. I like, yeah, and that's a good call, because I look at like the 50s Fly, and to me it's like I don't care about those characters. They all seem very like old Hollywood, but with nothing like feeling like there's nothing bubbling under the surface. People act in ways that don't make any sense to me, and then the creature itself is very silly, both for me, both in and out of context. So like it's crazy that we feel the opposite.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Copy paste. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the first hour of this movie feels so long because I don't find the characters to be compelling. Like you can watch really well acted characters make a sandwich and get something out of it and be like, holy shit, they're working through something. They don't even have to say anything. Like these characters, maybe it's like the old timey Hollywood kind of performance that they're putting on, maybe that sort of puts an additional barrier for me anyways. Like there's just not, I can't really like fall into the story. I'm just like, what, this is insanity. But but not in a way that I find like super interesting either. It's like a goofy kind of insanity almost.
I think that,
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think that like I for me the performances sell it, and maybe it's because I've seen it enough times to where like I don't know, I can my mind is predisposed to see things I haven't before, like to see what's breaking from my memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but like, there's some pretty subtle performance ticks, and I think all of the main characters, and then like on top of that, you've got some like I think pretty, for amount of screen time, pretty interesting side characters in like Annie, for example. Like Annie is like the saddest character on fucking film. Like it's crazy.
Wait,
what
Annie
happens.
is the mom?
The school
that's
teacher.
The teacher.
Oh,
the school teacher who
who's
loves Mitch.
I thought her name was
Kathy
Catherine.
is the little girl.
Oh my God. Okay, Kathy's the little girl. I've been referencing the fucking school teacher as Kathy. My bad.
Kathy's the little girl who loves corporal punishment.
Yeah, okay. I gotcha. Annie is the school teacher. Okay.
That was so fucking bizarre to me, where she kept referring to like
the hoods,
Mitch's clients as hoods or whatever. I was like, this feels
that
really
was weird. I forgot about that.
That
was
rough.
really weird.
Yeah, that's the time period for you, man. You're not gonna unfortunately get around that. I don't care. They're hoods. Well, okay. You're gonna be put on the Supreme Court one day with no qualifications. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know. I think there's some interesting things that go on, especially with Annie. Like that actress's performance to
You
me
know
was a standout in this movie.
That's a great point though, what you just said, because it really, like, sometimes it doesn't feel, like sometimes it doesn't feel like there's a big of a generational gap. But if you like, this little girl in this film is like 8 or 9, and if this was 60 years ago, that's just a 68-year-old. Those are the people who are getting elected.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like when you look back at movies like this and you feel like, oh my God, it's so old. It feels so dated. That mentality, it's like so far gone, and like we can't relate. But it's like, no, those people are still around. they're making decisions.
The fact that we can't relate to our leaders is kind of a problem, I would say. But
that is
anyway,
interesting. Yeah.
And like a lot of the, like, this is a movie that, more like you said, it, as far as it feeling dated, I think that's true. But I also think that it's easy, at least for me, to sort of pinpoint, at least not entirely, but like it feels easy for me to pinpoint, like, oh, that's a product of its time, and for me to meet it where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Whereas like some movies, like I watched this movie, I wish I could remember what it was called, some Jimmy Stewart movie where he's dating oh my God, the woman from Vertigo. It's the two of them together, and it was made the same year, and she's a witch, and it's kind of like a comedy, and the sensibilities in that are so dated and fucking dumb. Like I did not like this movie. I'm gonna have to kind of think of what it was called, but like there's a, like, that was stock standard for the time, was how they treated each other in that, which is like there's misogyny like kind of under the surface on this one, and kind of like pretty obvious to spot, but it is so obvious in every other Hollywood movie. I think that the fact that they've centered this troublemaker woman in the center of this fucking movie is actually not progressive, but it is certainly, like, for its time, a little riskier. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
even though they won't let her go full blown into like, yeah, I danced naked in a fountain, so what? Like, they didn't go that far.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, I mean, it really reminded me of the lead character at the beginning of Psycho, honestly. Which came out 3 years before this. Yeah. So I mean, at the time, it's not, I don't feel like, well, at least even, I mean, I know that's Hitchcock, but like even at least within the realms of like what's coming out at the time, I guess is what I'm saying, is like this was 3 years after.
I mean, it's not singular in that, but I'm saying that, like, you at that time, it's like finding I don't know, I'm trying to think of a modern comparison. It's like finding I don't know. It's unusual, even if it's and especially the fact that it is Hitchcock who likes to do that. He likes to have these women who have a pathos and a sense of like something going on upstairs. You know what I mean? They have a personality.
Yeah.
But then he also, because he's also a problematic figure in his own right, he always writes them ultimately to be mostly powerless.
Yeah.
To the men in the room. So it's both, as a product of its time in two ways. It's partially like it's progressive for its time, and it's the opposite for our time. It's a conflicted feeling that you get watching this movie, but that's still, to me, better than like watching a movie that doesn't even give them a personality, doesn't allow them to be anything other than Donna Reed. You know, like, I would rather have the Hitchcock leads from this era, as tumultuous of a statement as that can be.
In some ways, that almost kind of feels like a Tarantino thing, where you're like, you know what kind of gets Tarantino's rocks off based on how he makes his films, where this is kind of that same thing. It's like, you obviously know the kind of women that Hitchcock desire, but also you're able to see into the, like, he wants that type of woman to submit to him. You know, he wants to be able to have all that creativity and all that, like, ambitiousness, but to bow to his will.
Right. Like, I love women so long as they ultimately.
I want a really interesting, woman who's complex and who's adventurous.
It's literally
and
the
whatever,
manic pixie dream girl
That's
thing.
what I say.
Kind of, yeah.
It's literally that.
Yeah. Ugh.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool.
I think Melanie is a manic pixie dream girl prototype.
Yeah,
I think
that's fair. That's fair. That's an interesting assessment.
Super fucking rich too. Good for her.
Yeah.
Hello.
Good for her.
Do you guys have any other major points you want to hit before we rate The Birds?
No,
No,
I
I
mean,
think-
probably get into it in our final reviews, I
Yeah.
think.
If there's anything else you want to hit, feel free to throw it in there. So let's go ahead and rate this thing. Juice, why don't you kick us off out of 5? How do you feel about The Birds?
Yeah, I was harsher on this, but I mean, there are a lot of things that I did like about this, and I really do like the kind of like cinema look and feel of the time. I really love the setting, which we didn't get to talk on much, and
Oh, yeah.
that
I've
was
been there.
oh really? Yeah. So I
Yeah.
really liked it, and that was honestly one of the things that kind of helped me get through the kind of pacing issues I had, because even though we are spending time just like walking in this convenience store, I was looking at like the background of the convenience store, like all the shells that they're selling and stuff like that. So like when these characters are talking about shit that I don't think is particularly interesting, I don't give a fuck about these characters because I don't find them relatable. I like that they are at least spending some time in this setting that I found interesting, because I was just like looking around at the landscape and just kind of how this small quaint little town works, and like reading between the lines of the people who live there and stuff. I liked that. Just the look and the aesthetic of it, and also just like conceptually being isolated a little bit and stuff. So I did like the setting. And I like a lot of the visuals that they set up with the birds that hint at the dread or that build the dread, and I thought a lot of them were very effective. Like I said, the still shot of the dude, you know, with his eyes pecked out in his room, like that was very effective. The, you know, even the scene that Randy has as his background with, you know, all of them on the playground, like, man, that was great. And of course, you know, the scene at the end where she goes into the room, man, that's really effective to make you fucking scared of birds. And the final scene where they're going out to the car, and even her traumatic, you know, catatonic state of like, no, I'm not going back out there. It's like, man, all that stuff was very effective. To get there was like a slog for me, though. As we said, this whole hour building up to it of these characters that I don't know. I just didn't really like these characters, and I don't feel like a lot of them kind of grew much by the end of it. I don't feel like there's any kind of like I don't know, growth or anything happening. Like in the end of it, I was kind of disappointed that Mitch was the only motherfucker doing anything. Um and just like I'm glad that I got a glimpse into them on like that little like speech she did, because it gave some depth to what's going on. But in the end of it, it's just like she's useless, and she's like pissing me off. And the little girl with her like little hoods and like, let's bring these fucking birds. And and the only interesting one, like Annie, she fucking dies, and I feel like she kind of got like a bad, it's a whole situation, man. I was like feeling bad for that
That's
bitch
tragic.
because yeah, she like sticks around in this town, and also the way that Melanie treats her made me hate Melanie even more, because it's like, yeah, like she knew that there was something going on, and she almost kind of like rubs salt in the wound, and then she's like, "Can I stay with you?" and shit like that. Oh, that shit was pissing me off.
And
I
asked her to help her too.
Yeah,
Like,
help me, and like let me
uh,
stay in your house, and let me talk to this dude on the phone in your fucking house and shit. I just like, it seemed like he was
He
going
called
out of
her.
his way to fucking like make me not like these main characters. Even though he might like be indulging in it, it's just like I felt more for like Annie and stuff. And so when she died, that was a bummer, but it also kind of made me pissed off because I was like, man, they really just threw her under the bus. So yeah, overall though, I am more positive on this. I do like the cinematography and the sound design and the setting and a lot of the shots. Some of it was just too goofy and dated for me. Some of it was too slow for me. Some of it was a little too misogynistic for me, and just like some of these characters fell flat and just didn't fucking do anything, and sometimes pissed me off. So I think overall, I'm gonna give this a 3.5.
3.5 from Juice.
Yeah.
All right.
Bob, out of 5.
Oh,
I feel like I was a little more harsher, but you gave even more like like just generally you gave an even more like I don't really like this film recommendation. So well, I'm curious, where are you gonna land on this one, Bob?
well, we've covered most of it. I think the movie starts off in sort of an interesting way, where we have like I guess what you would consider to be a meet cute situation today in like modern terms, but then you find out like, oh, this dude's like a blood sucking lawyer, and the only reason he knows this girl is because she was in court, and like she's like this interesting practical joker. Or yeah, Randy, do you have?
I just correct the record on this. I think he is like he. I don't think he's a prosecutor. I think he's a I think he's.
Doesn't he have a
criminal
speech
lawyer.
of like, I only want to see people like you in jail or something? Only jokester, practical
Because
joker.
people who break the law. He's a hardline law guy, so ding him on
Okay.
that. But like, I don't think he's
Sure.
Okay.
like
He's
the blood
so
sucking
he's a
lawyer thing. I don't
defender.
know if that's
Okay, yeah.
supported.
Yeah, I
It
guess
just
that is
sounds
okay.
good. It sounds good.
Okay.
He's a
It does.
lawyer. He's an extremely
Just want to be John Hammond
confident lawyer who also likes to play practical jokes on people. So I don't know. It starts off in a way where like, oh, okay, there's like some chemistry happening here, and then you find out more about who these people really are, and like, oh, well, that's interesting. But then they're just like turn out to be shitty people, and we spend a long ass fucking time watching this woman drive and like ask people where people live and what their names are and stuff. And it just loses a shitload of steam for me. When the bird stuff starts to happen, generally speaking, I think the effects are interesting. They're cool to like watch happen and try and like conceive of how they made those effects 60 years ago. And that like really does kind of pull you back into the story. But then again, the characters do a lot of dumb shit, and there's not really much of an arc happening. And there's like questionable choices, and then by the end there's some great cinematography and some like really cool moments that happen in this movie that I do think are amazing and worth watching the movie for. But by the end of it, it doesn't feel like there's much of a story happening, and like the development is lacking, and it feels sort of like unsatisfying. There is like a moment that at the very end of the movie where they're all standing in the living room, like right when the power goes off, and they all sort of look up at the ceiling and they hear the birds, and like the camera pans across all their faces, and that shit is just like money. I was like, holy cinema!
I forgot
moment.
about that with the sound. Yeah, that was
fantastic.
That was great.
I loved that, and I already mentioned them poking through the front door. A fantastic sequence there. Her walking into the room, as silly of a choice as that may be, that sequence is extremely effective. And I actually, because I hadn't seen this movie in so long, I was like, she is going to die. I was like actually scared for her in that moment. But then the big dumb Brawny Mitch is like, oh, what are you doing? And pulls her out.
And she's just fucking
here to save you, honey.
Oh,
and she's just
Mitch.
creaming her shorts apparently.
I know. And then he does say, I was just like face palming. I was like, this is fucking stupid. But the end of the movie where they do drive off again in an amazing cinematic moment. It looks incredible. So like there's just great moments in this movie, but like overall I didn't necessarily enjoy the experience of watching it. I'm gonna kind of just go right down the middle and give this a 2.5 myself. Randeezy, how do you feel about the birds?
Let me rescue this review here real quick.
69 stars.
Yeah. So
Randy's
it's
a man
no
of
secret.
art.
I am a man of art. I'm not a man of science. I don't care about your big city logic. No. So like a couple of things that you guys said that I didn't agree with is like I did grow to like these characters. I think that the more you get to see how they operate, even they're like it's because of their flaws and because of the situation they're in that I start to get endeared to them. I don't think that Mitch is a shitty guy. I don't think he's written to be a shitty guy, I guess I should say. I think that we see that as modern viewers. So I try to like give that a little bit of slack. And I think that that's kind of the big problem I think a lot of the problems that I have with this movie come down to sensibilities of the time and of this director, like moral sensibilities or societal sensibilities. But some of that stuff comes out really well. I really love the mist type conversation that's going on. I like that there's a bubbling tension between these people trying to convince everyone that they're right and all this stuff. Like that's a classic thing, and I think it works pretty well here. But like having people not believe them because it's so preposterous and all this stuff, I think that all works really well. It's like it's the mist, it's strangers on Delancey Street or whatever that Twilight Zone episode is called. Like I don't know, like the turning on each other, the rejection of this newcomer who brings in frivolity and like who disrupts the status quo. I don't know. There's a lot of like things like that really like engross me. And this time around, I just sort of allowed myself to live in the moment as if I had never seen this before, as opposed to like waiting on bated breath for the birds to attack. Like that's why I feel like a lot of people, and maybe you guys are the same, maybe you disagree with this, but I think that people like kind of reject this movie a little bit because it's got a promise of birds attacking, and it really is sparing with how it approaches that for a long time. It does make you take a hike to get there, and I can understand not liking that hike. I can understand all this stuff, but for me, if I allowed myself to experience it just as a sequence of events, it started to really come into a better focus for me, I think. The scary stuff to me works really well. Justin, you mentioned quite a few. I think that the guy catching fire was pretty fucking effective because he's just a fucking dipshit who has no idea he's about to explode. I don't know. And the way that it's shot is like, again, a lot of the best things about this can be informed by the sound and mixing. They don't use music, so when you see that corpse with his eyes pecked out, there's no sound except for the like quiet squawking of resting birds, and you see Jessica Tandy freak out. Like shit like that works really well. Like Jessica Tandy's so fucking good in this. I learned to like her because of her speech. I never disliked the little girl. She was just kind of a little girl. She was kind of stock standard. I liked Annie, and I felt really like heartbroken that she ended up the way she did. I don't know, like I think there's a lot to like about this movie. I think there's a lot to talk about with this movie, and not necessarily in any way that I don't feel that it's dated in ways that take the enjoyment away from me for the most part. It's dated in ways that I can rationalize pretty easily, especially with Hitchcock not being a living person and knowing that he can't benefit from from anything I have to say against him or anything, or like any of our promotion or whatever.
All the other living directors do, though.
No, like if I'm not going to give my money to Bill Cosby, you know what I'm saying?
Okay. I just meant like they're gonna be. Oh, I thought you meant like benefit from our wisdom, our critique.
No.
Our wisdom. Oh,
why would you think I would say that?
I don't know. That's why I was like, what?
I got something to teach you, Hitchcock. No. Listen.
Now Hitchcock's okay, but let me tell you how a real filmmaker would do this. Now, I think that deserving of its praise in the visuals department for its time, in the sound design and mixing, in the pathos of the characters that we get to see, and in its absolute unflappable unwillingness to tell us why this is happening. I love that it doesn't do that. If it started going into exposition territory, that becomes every B movie you've ever seen from this era, basically. Also, I just was looking up some stuff, and apparently there was written into the script an alternate ending where, and I guess I could read this in trivia, but I want to read this now because I think it would like really amp my score up, which is that they would cut to a shot of birds just completely dominating the Golden Gate Bridge.
Dude, that would have been cool. Yeah.
Right, because they like the radio says we think it's localized to Bodega Bay with pockets of others, and then you cut to that. That's the fucking gut punch that you need in this movie, I think. But it was too expensive for them to film that.
Yeah, sure.
And they also cut out the part where the birds did attack Mitch and Melanie's car as they drive away.
Okay.
So they cut that out for whatever reason.
I feel like that's honestly, I can assume that that's going to happen. And I'm
You can,
okay
yeah,
with
you
them
can keep it
not
ambiguous.
showing that. Yeah. But the
I think
Golden
it would've
Gate
been cool to
Bridge,
show.
because again, that's allowing the imagination to be like, oh no.
Well, it just massively increases the scope of the problem.
Yeah, it does. I like that.
So
yeah.
I would have liked that, and it's a shame that they didn't have the money for it. Anyway, long story short is I think this movie is well worth anyone's time, and I think though it has some dated issues, though it has some products of its time and something of a sex pest behind the camera, he's also very good at doing the scaries and the spookies and the creepies. So I got to give it a 4.5.
4.5 from your boy Randeezy. Damn. That is going to put our aggregate at a 3.5. Let's go ahead and
Pretty
jump.
good for a classic.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad.
It's
positive.
okay. It's
I
on
wonder what
par
the
with
Fly
some-
was. I just kept thinking of the Fly. I know they're even like separated by a decent amount of time and stuff like that. But as we were talking about.
3.17 for the Fly.
Oh, let me drop my
You gave that a
score.
4.5.
Oh.
Did I? Okay. What did you
Yeah.
give it?
I gave it a 2. So,
Oh,
What
so
did I
I'm
give?
more balanced than Randu's.
dude, no, that movie doesn't deserve a 0.5 extra.
What did I give it? I don't remember.
3
A
flat.
3?
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, 3.5 on the Birds from the Straight Chilling crew. Let's go ahead and jump to our Rotten Tomatoes segment, see what the critics and users think about the Birds.
Certified fresh to death.
All right, ladies and germs, this is the Rotten Tomatoes segment in which I'm going to have these two gentlemen guess within the best of their abilities what the aggregate positive score is for the Birds on RottenTomatoes.com. That's both critics and users, starting with the critics. Bob, we'll start with you. There are only 62 reviews on here, presumably because it's quite an old movie by the time Rotten Tomatoes reared its ugly head. What do you think that those 62 reviewers aggregated out to be in terms of positive scores?
I think this is going to be pretty damn high. 90. I'll take a 90.
90%. Juice, what about you? You the over? You the under? What are you thinking?
I'm gonna bank on it being like, super high. I'm gonna take the risky bet. But I think it's hard because we haven't covered a lot of Hitchcock films either. But my impression would be that it would be like nuts in the butts high. So I'm gonna take the 96, my favorite sexual position.
Ooh. Oh man. I love just laying my head back against someone's ass
Uh-huh.
like a
Or
pillow.
high.
Well,
Oh,
I'll tell
yeah.
you what.
Comforting.
Your favorite position is also the winning score for this critical darling. It is a 94% certified
Whoa!
fresh. from Rotten
Almost a
Tomatoes.
tie. Whoa, that's a who.
That was close. It was close.
Blah, blah.
That's yes.
Don't
touch me.
One of the things I'm pushing really hard on Creature Comforts is for people to come with their own winning chant in case they win Rotten Tomatoes. It's been pretty good so far.
I found mine.
That's always been the case.
A human
I
can't
know.
recreate that sound. We all know that.
It's
I
impossible.
know. I just have to
It's
play
impossible.
the bump.
We called a scientist. They checked it
Just
out.
don't have the lungs for it. All right, Juice, since you took that category, you took the critic score. Why don't we start you off on the audience score? There's over 100,000 audience ratings. Are you going to be able to operate?
That
You
shit
are-
makes me wanna watch some Bigfoot. That could not be a human being.
There's no
It's
human
so
being that's
obviously a
ever
dude.
made-
It's
It's so
No,
fucking
no,
clear.
no. That's not true. That's not true.
dude. Oh
Impossible.
my god.
Yeah,
oh,
so
man,
there are
that's a
over
sidekick.
100,000 audience ratings for this film. Juice, you tell me what you think that audience is thinking.
I guess it's also going to be super high. I feel like it's probably going to be lower than the critics on this one because like 94 is pretty high. I'm gonna steal Bob's and say 90.
You bitch.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
mine.
Bob, how are you going to counter that? What's your counter move?
Ah,
Boy,
ah,
Give it another good grunt so we know you're serious this time.
you sound like a
Okay, good.
Bigfoot, boss.
No, nothing like a Bigfoot.
mm,
Not possible.
I'm gonna go. I'll go down a scotch with an 88, please.
88. Project 88. Well, Bob, congratulations. You broke that run on juice. It's an 83%.
Ooh.
Whoa,
So-
okay.
Yeah, I think that's about
That's a hell's good.
There you go, Bob.
that's
Proud
a
of
little
you.
bit higher than our aggregate. But it's in
Yeah.
the zone. It's like
For sure.
75.
The auto
auto
zone.
Yeah, 3.5.
Whoa,
go.
Bob.
Oh, we are not getting paid for that, guys. Come on.
We've been programmed.
Oh, yeah.
Critics' consensus reads as follows, proving once again that build-up is the key to suspense. Alfred Hitchcock successfully turned birds into some of the most terrifying villains in history. All
No, he
right.
didn't.
I will say though, the thing that's interesting about this film is so living in Seoul, there's a lot of pigeons. People are so scared of pigeons. To me, I just walk and they fucking move away and they don't phase
They
me
are
at
scared of
all.
you.
But people, are like in the city, scared the fuck out of pigeons, and so I could understand the primal fear if you were just kind of naturally scared of birds. That this would freak you the fuck out.
Man, their bones are hollow. Like, give them a whack. Like
They're-
you're fine.
Okay,
They don't. Yeah, they're not swarming.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
if one
Birds
was on
just
your
don't
face,
do that. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think that there's reason to not want to come in contact with a bird, but yeah, being afraid to walk by one is kind of
no,
I
yeah,
don't know.
but
Everybody's
you'd be
got their fears, I
surprised.
guess.
Yeah, yeah, there's a
Um,
lot.
Let's read some negative reviews and hope that they have some humor to them. That's the idea, and it rarely works out. Let's find out. All right, there's only
This
3
time.
negative reviews from critics, so we have a very small pool here. Here's one. Beneath all of this elaborate feather bedlam lies a Hitchcock and Bull story that's essentially a foul ball. There
That's
are
pretty
3
good.
puns
Oh
in
my
this
god!
fucking professional article.
Wow,
That's embarrassing bad.
gold star, buddy.
Foul
Put it
ball
on the fridge.
or what? Foul ball.
Waka
Oh, man.
fucking waka. Jesus Christ. That was
Whoa.
written in 2007.
Whoa.
I would have forgiven it if it was written at the time of this movie coming out, but it was written in 2007. So I
Yeah,
mean,
that's pretty rough.
somebody got paid. Somebody got paid.
Well,
to pin that.
we're assuming a lot there.
I mean, ChatGPT wasn't around.
They get
2007,
paid like
so I
we
think
get
can be
paid.
sure.
for doing
This is
this.
Variety magazine. I think they got paid.
Okay. Damn. I need to write for a magazine. They're on the
yeah.
rise.
They pay.
If you come up with 3 puns in a sentence, you are a fucking lock.
Magazine is a medium that'll never go away.
You're right. Let's
Second Amendment,
invest.
baby. All right. That's it for Rotten Tomatoes. Thanks for playing.
Tight. Let's talk trivia.
Okay, let's do that. I'm not stalling at all.
It's totally time for trivia.
You got some trivia.
I got so much trivia.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Let's get into it.
It's a pile. Your boy Alfred Hitchcock revealed on the Dick Cavett Show in 1968 that 3,200 birds were trained for this movie. He said the ravens were the cleverest and the seagulls were the most vicious.
Yeah.
Fucking seagulls.
Damn, that's
Um,
dedication to train that many birds.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of fucking birds.
That's a lot.
well,
I don't know. Go ahead.
some of their methods may have been questionable,
Well,
and
yeah,
a lot
sure.
of this movie is questionable. We'll get into it. Rod Taylor apparently claimed the seagulls were fed a mixture of wheat and whiskey. It was the only way to get them to stand around so much.
Oh my god, dude.
Not great.
Dude, the 60s, what a
the-
wild time.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, wheat, little
Uh,
whiskey. Wheat? I wouldn't even think birds would be eating wheat. Well, I guess so.
Well,
okay.
like it's like
Yeah,
as a
grain.
grain.
Yeah, grain.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Feed them birds
I
some
think they're
fucking whiskey.
Just give them some beer. I mean, just cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
Why spend the Jameson on these fucking birds?
The Jameson. I don't think they were spending that much money. It was
Throw 'em
swill.
some
It was
Miller
toilet
High
whiskey.
Life.
Grab a 40 and pour it on these birds' heads.
Full granddad whiskey just for the birds.
The schoolhouse in Bodega, California has been known to be haunted even back during the filming. According to Tippi Hedren, the entire cast was spooked to be in there. She mentioned how she felt that the building was immensely populated, but there was nobody there.
That's
interesting.
cool.
That's spooky.
Yes, I like that.
In this house.
I've been there, man. Like that, like Bodega Bay is a town, and you can go
Mhm.
to in Northern California or central Northern California, just a couple hours north of.
Is it still
San
quaint
Francisco.
or no?
No, it is. It's
Mm.
pretty quaint. I think
Nice.
that there's a few extra buildings around in that
Mm,
next to the school building or whatever, and I think the house that Annie lived in is torn down, but
no.
it's there, and they've got a couple of little, like, touristy things, like a mannequin dressed as Tippy in a phone booth and shit like that. It's fun. It's a beautiful part of the fucking country, though, man.
Yeah, I
It is
bet.
fun.
Yeah, it looks wonderful. We should open a bar there.
We should.
Yeah. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's move
invest
to
our
rural
funds.
California together. That's
All
what
right.
we're doing.
Let's do it.
Straight sipping, the straight chilling bar. Come on
Mhm.
now.
Bob, they have electricity in California.
The birds
now.
on view. Yeah. It
Oh,
causes a lot
shit.
of forest fires, as I understand.
It's
Um,
a problem. Yeah, sorry.
Not on the
sorry.
sea or on the water. Okay.
Sorry
Bob,
for
you
y'all
could
in
fix it.
California. I could try.
Fix the grid for them, Bob.
Let me fix the
Got a
entire
fresh Florida
grid.
upstart here to solve all your electrical problems.
Straight electrical. I don't know.
Yeah.
Straight chilling spinoff. We got a utility going. Hey, there's more trivia. When the children are running down the street from the schoolhouse, extra footage was shot on the back lot of Universal to make the scenes more terrifying. A few of the children were brought back and put in front of a process screen on a treadmill. They ran in front of the screen on the treadmill with the Bodega Bay footage behind them, while a combination of real and fake crows were attacking them. There were
that's-
3
oh,
rows
sorry.
of children. Yeah, it gets worse. 3 rows of children. And when the treadmill was brought up to speed, it ran very fast. On a couple occasions, several of the children in the front fell, causing the ones in the back to also fall. It was a very difficult scene to shoot, obviously. And it took a few days to get right. The birds were hand puppets, and there were also some mechanical in there. So
It sounds
kids were
like a
just tripping over
shit
kids.
show.
That's
You got a bunch of
fucking
kids running on a
ridiculous.
giant treadmill with fucking puppets and real
3 days.
crows.
I was
That's-
going to
30
make a
days.
suggestion about the editing, but now it feels like maybe they should have not shot that.
Oh, that sounds so fucking stupid.
All
Now
right,
that's
kids.
the-
Don't worry if you break out a few teeth. It's bound to happen.
Oh my god,
They got a
that
fresh
sounds
set
like a
that'll come in.
terrible idea.
Yeah.
Jesus. I was gonna say, like,
And that's
thinking
like the
back to that
worst
scene, one thing I
shot.
didn't mention is I feel like that whole scene could have benefited from, like, just truncating the cuts a lot. Like, if they were,
Yeah.
like, real snappy with the cuts, I think it would have read a lot better, and maybe it would
Probably.
have been as funny to you, Justin.
Yeah, probably. It probably would have hid like the puppetry
Right.
and stuff, the shit that looked real. Yeah, you get some real good, like quick cuts in there, like the dread, the turning, the boom, boom. Make it even very stylized, and yeah, that would have benefited.
Could have helped.
Yeah.
This movie and the original story, written by Daphne du Maurier, basically share almost nothing. There's no characters whatsoever. The original was set at a farm and not a sleepy bayside town. Obviously, birds attack and then fall dormant and then attack, like in this movie. And they were the reason the birds were doing it in the story. It was somehow tied to the tide rolling in and
Oh,
whatnot.
I thought it was
Oh.
about, like, food shortage or something. Like, maybe
well-
that's tied together, probably.
It could be. Also, like, this is trivia that I did not research myself, so it could just be.
Oh,
false.
I read
Sorry.
something that like made me understand it, and I could be wrong, but what I read made me think that it was intended to be sort of like an environmental parable. So
Okay,
it had to do with, like, the birds' food supply running short because of whatever presumably
Gotcha.
human intervention.
Yeah,
Remember
And
when we
then
had an
they
intern
needed
who
food,
wrote
so they ate
trivia
us.
for us?
for a day or two. I do.
That
Yeah.
was dope.
That was a good dude.
Shouts out.
We appreciate
Shouts out
it.
if you're listening. Yeah, we appreciate it.
If anybody else wants
Any help.
unpaid, want to do some unpaid
Yeah, if
labor
you
for
want to
us,
work for free for straight chilling, we're hiring.
for free.
we will
Uh,
even mention your name on the show.
Unless you don't
This-
want to.
unless you
What a
don't want to.
value.
We will dox you if you want, but only if you
Yeah.
want. This movie features 370 effect shots. The final shot is a composite of 32 separately filmed elements. So I guess
Okay.
they layered the birds, I guess.
Mhm.
There's a headline back in August 18th, 1961 of the Santa Cruz Sentinel that said, "Seabird invasion hits coastal homes." And it detailed how millions of migrating birds crashed into cars and buildings, broke television antennas, streetlights, and actually tried to enter houses. When residents went outdoors at 3 a.m. to investigate, the birds flew at the flashlight beams and drove residents back into their houses. Although Hitchcock
I'm living in a nightmare.
Hitchcock optioned the story in 1955 for the birds, but he began filming this movie shortly after reading about the 1961 attack. So that's nuts.
That's pretty cool. I was thinking about like how would you deal with like these birds because they're pretty small and like kind of hard to hit in these big droves. You'd have to bring out flamethrowers. You have to just roast them bitches
that
out
we
of the
all
sky.
have in our homes.
You
We
could
all
make
My
a
emergency
flamethrower.
flamethrower supply.
fried chicken falling from the sky.
Dude,
What a
all you
blessing.
got to do is get the can and the matches, you know.
Get
Okay,
the
Rorschach.
Can.
Yeah.
Get the can.
I gotta get my Aquanet, guys, so I can flame torch these fucking seagulls.
honey.
Hey,
get the can real quick.
I'm just saying what Soju would do. Okay, that's my solution.
WWSD.
Roast them out of the sky.
There's the same region
Good.
actually experienced the exact same problem again in 1991. Turns out there's a single-celled algae that will occasionally become toxic, and it works its way up the food chain to the fish that seabirds eat. None of the other animals are bothered by it, apparently, just the birds, and it causes disorientation, seizures, and even death. The dead birds in 1961 weren't tested, but a lab had a sample of a small organism that fed on algae from 1961, and that specimen was tested, and it was rife with the toxin. So,
Damn, that's
fucking
lucky.
algae.
Yeah, science
Jesus
is
Christ.
scary.
Science is wild. Fucking
Fucking
wild.
Last of Us shit
Um,
over here.
Here's some more questionable ethical bullshit that happened. During the birthday party attack, in order to ensure the gulls could pop the balloons, pins were placed inside the birds' mouths and their beaks were taped closed. One of the gulls, with its mouth still taped closed, flew away, and the trainers spent hours looking for it because obviously it would have died. But they found it, apparently. So,
Okay, the birds are officially not the villain anymore. Jesus Christ.
yeah.
Oh my god, this sounds insane.
That's
Yes.
just so
Sounds
shitty.
terrible.
Jesus Christ.
This was the first movie ever to carry the Universal Pictures name after dropping the Universal International name, which that's pretty badass.
Okay.
Didn't know that.
Badass.
Fucking A, brother. The studio spent $200,000 on creating mechanical birds for the film that were barely used. So,
Damn.
tight.
That's probably for a good reason. If,
Yeah.
if
Probably.
what we see, if what we got is any indication, I would imagine they were not working too good.
Nah.
This was the last Hitchcock movie to be nominated for an Academy Award. It was nominated for Best Special Effects, but it did not win. I think
Okay.
Cleopatra is the movie that took it that year.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sounds about right.
Oh yeah, we're big fans of Cleopatra.
We
on this
know.
one.
Oh yeah.
We all know.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
The climactic scene in which Melanie, played by Tippi Hedren, is attacked in the bedroom took 7 days to shoot. Hedren said, "It was the worst week of my life. The physical and emotional tolls of filming this scene were so strong that production was shut down for a week afterwards, and Hedren ended up in the hospital. Apparently, real birds were attached to her clothing by nylon strings to film that."
What the
Fucking
fuck,
A.
man?
Oh my god.
I mean, that ties into that bit of
yeah.
that bit of trivia that we talked about earlier today before the podcast, which I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to cover that as a tie into that because it's related.
Yeah, we can get into that.
Let's save
So
it for Cooter.
It's getting there. We're getting there.
Okay, we'll put a pin in it. We'll circle back.
Okay.
In
Put a pin in
2016,
it and tape its beak shut.
tape its fucking beak shut.
And then
In
prod it
2000
with a fucking cattle prod to
God
act
damn.
good.
Fry it with the can. In 2016, The Birds was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the United States Library of Congress. It is now in the National Film Registry. There is this is the last thing I'll say, and then we can wrap it up. The Birds 2: Land's End was released in 1994, directed by Rick Rosenthal, who removed his name from the credit and used the Hollywood pseudonym Alan Smithy. So this was
Alan Smithy.
Jim Jonesy.
This went straight to TV, and it had Tippi Hedren in it, but she was just playing a very, very small supporting role. She wasn't returning as her original character. I don't know much about it. I've heard it's pretty rough. But Vinegar Syndrome, of course, did release it on Blu-ray last year. So if you want to pick it up, you can do that easily.
Was it made for TV? Did I hear that right?
Made for TV, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And also
nothing but greatness.
Rick Rosenthal is a director we've spoken of before. Did he direct Halloween Resurrection? Is that it? Is that the one?
Oh my god.
Something. Yeah, we have talked about him before.
Halloween 2.
Yeah.
81.
Oh, really?
Halloween 2. Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's much better. That's much better. Good for him.
He's done a lot of TV
also
work.
Smallville.
Mostly TV work,
Yeah.
it looks like. And Resurrection. Halloween Resurrection.
Resurrection. There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
But
so he directed Halloween 2 and
I remember us mentioning that.
Yeah,
When we finally covered 2, we were like, he did this one, and we were like blown away by that.
That's such a quality gap.
Yeah.
And Witches of Eastwick. That's a well-loved movie. The Practice.
And some Buffy.
He's got some ups and he's got some downs.
He does.
You can't win them all, but some people only win a few.
Yeah. Damn.
He had a couple good ones. Yeah.
I mean, he worked consistently.
Had some bad, we've had some bad episodes.
He brought us the greatest rat in cinematic history. So gotta love that. And I love the Alan Smithy thing.
Straight Sean episode.
Alan Smithy is like, it's not just like a name he chose. It's like the name you put on a project that you don't want anyone to associate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Multiple people have done it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I love that.
Yeah. So I'll save the little bit of extra trivia for Cooter of the Week, which we are going to get into right now.
Straight chillin'.
Cooter of the Week!
Juice, what is a Cooter and why do we hunt them?
Oh, Cooter's character type in a straight Sean exclusive, Bob. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a Cooter, but we want the Cooter with the most points. The 5 points of Cooterdom are sexual deviance, manipulation, smug arrogance, overall look and attire, and overall patheticness. Boys, in this film, do we have a Cooter?
Very important wording there.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
I don't know. I feel like one of
Pick
our
in
2
tonight?
main characters can probably hit at least 3. I feel like.
I think so. I think there's some arrogance between the both of them.
There's
That-
arrogance and there's some
sure.
manipulation going on. Good Lord, there's some back and forth manipulation going on.
There is. It starts off as playful to a point where I'm like, I wouldn't call it manipulation, just like playfulness. But once he starts negging her about like jumping in the fountain and shit like that, and she's clearly upset, like I'm like, fuck you for that. But
yeah. All right. Some manipulation there.
Yeah.
And
looking attire, they both look good.
They do. They both look good. All the time.
Patheticness, maybe for Mitch. Maybe because he's well, it's debatable because like I would say maybe Mitch because he lets his mom drag his fucking love life around, but also we're told pretty outright by his mom that that's not the case, and they get the impression kind of that he does what I get the impression that she's right about that. That it's really
Yeah.
like it's an easy excuse for a spurned lover, unfortunately.
That's fair. Yeah. Pathetic. Yeah, actually, he's the only one doing fucking shit, to be fair. So arrogant sexual deviance. He's kind of like, I don't know. It seems like he's dragging all these women around. But
Kind of, but I
guess
again I feel like Annie made her own choice, and then in absence
Yeah.
of Annie, I don't think he's necessarily doing anything
yeah.
to string anyone else along. Like shit, like Melanie shows up on her own accord, and Annie apparently like stays there of her own accord. So I don't know.
Yeah. So maybe could we give it to Melanie? She's got manipulation and smug arrogance too. Does she ever hit any other point? I feel like some of her interactions with Annie, like, I don't know if it would be patheticness. Maybe that's part of the smug arrogance. They just like don't sit right with me.
I think that's like, I think it's just uncomfortable because
Yeah.
one woman is clearly still in love and the other is like interested.
Yeah.
But the first girl is like she's out of the picture for all intents and purposes. She
Yeah.
knows it and she's trying to be cool with it. And Melanie's maybe a little cavalier with that.
Yeah.
I think it's just a little callous. I don't know if it hits any.
She's
other
not really
points.
pathetic though. I will give her, like, she always stands up for herself. Like when that woman's like trying to tear down the diner, she's like, "Bitch, I'm gonna slap
She
the
does
shit
slap
out
him.
of you."
He goes a slapping that day.
Yeah, and
She
she
shows
like
violence.
saves the little girl several times. So, maybe not. They're getting close, but I guess they
Some
just
cooter watches happening
Yeah.
They're
there.
closer than I would have thought, but those 2 points
Yeah.
I think are fair to give
Yeah.
for both of them.
But we do have another cooter to discuss. Randy, I'll let you take this one away.
Oh my. So we basically uncovered this pre-program when we were talking about that bit of trivia that I mentioned, which is basically that Tippi Hedren not too long ago, I forget when this clip was from, wrote a book, a memoir, which talks quite a lot long length about how Alfred Hitchcock basically punished her outright on the set of this film for not sleeping with him. And he did that by using the aforementioned real birds that he tied to her shirt and made her film for apparently 7 days.
That's insane.
And yeah, it is very fucking insane.
I think some of that information is not entirely correct. I watched, it's like an Inside Edition thing that you shared.
It's a short clip.
It is. So this 2016 is when her book, a memoir, came out, and she started doing a lot of interviews. And none of us have read the book. I'm sure if you did, you'd get a lot more information out of it. But if you, in that clip, the voice saying that Hitchcock like abused her, but specifically because she wouldn't sleep with him by way of the birds, was not her voice. And I saw another interview with her saying like the sexual advances did not start during the birds at all, and apparently he was generally easy to work with. She was doing another interview in 2016 with Larry King where she herself said all this. And then the sexual advances happened when they were filming Marnie, which is the movie she did with Hitchcock after this. And she shut him down immediately. And then he did go on to say that, you can't back out of your contract. He signed her to like a 6-year deal because until the birds, she had only done ads on TV and stuff. And he sort of like saw one of her ads and then told one of his handlers, like, find out who that girl is. I want her in my movie. He found her. She's in the birds. It was a success. Signed her to a 6-year deal. After he started making sexual advances, she wanted out of the contract. He's like, you can't, you got a family to take care of. What are you talking about? She's like, fuck you, motherfucker. I value my life. Do what you got to do. And they never made a movie together after Marnie. And apparently the sexual advances didn't happen until Marnie. I mean, however, whatever the reasoning was, Alfred Hitchcock did indeed tie real life fucking birds to her body for a week, which is a nightmare.
And she had to go to
in
the
and of
hospital,
itself.
and then
She had to go to the hospital.
Oh my god.
I mean, and he's hitting on his like that's Weinstein territory, man. Maybe not successfully with Tippi, but like that's a where there's smoke, there's fire situation where this guy is, in my opinion, based on what I've heard, and I'm pretty convinced that he's and the way he treats his actresses on screen, like the way he treats his female characters and writes things.
Oh yeah.
It seems pretty clear to me that he's got a real misogynist bug up his ass and bit of a sex pest bent towards his actresses. I think that's reasonable to say. And that puts him heavily in contention for Cooter of the Week, because that right there is sexual deviancy, manipulation, and smug arrogance, and patheticness.
And
if you wanna get right down
patheticness.
to it.
Yeah. And
we
his
didn't, I didn't know
attire
about the
is-
kids. Like, that's a whole other thing.
Dude, yeah, that kid.
Yeah, tripping over each other's rolling
What the
bodies
fuck?
on a treadmill. Yeah.
Like, it's pretty, like, it's like the open secret sort of thing about Hitchcock,
Oh
where
my
like even for
God.
up until his death, like people knew, or people largely seem to understand that if you're a young woman, there's a high likelihood that he's going to make an advance on you, even though he's
Yeah.
married or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And if you work with him as a young woman, there's a good chance you're gonna get your ass pinched or some shit. I don't know, whatever people do.
Boys will be
Um,
boys, eh, boys?
Really
Assholes
rotund
will be
English
assholes.
boys.
Good evening.
So-
Good evening.
Yeah, definitely.
Who could have told he
Cooter.
was a creep?
Yeah. Also, something that I did find out on that Inside Edition clip that you shared, Randy, was that
Mhm.
Tippi Hedren's granddaughter is Dakota Johnson. which
Yeah,
was
I didn't
interesting.
realize that. Yeah, that was pretty
And
interesting.
she's not ever watched 50 Shades of Grey, despite her granddaughter being in it, presumably
choice.
for the sexual content. And she kind of like, the interviewer's like, have you seen it? And she's like, no. She really laughs it off, which
That would
find
be
to be
interesting,
hilarious.
yeah, because I guess if somebody I was related to was like in a movie, I definitely want to support them. But if they were like in this like sex scene or like flashing their yabos, that might be kind of weird for me.
yeah, I think I could get over it. Personally.
Yeah, I
Kinda weird.
probably
Yeah.
could. Yeah, but it still would be weird. I guess depending on how close I was with them.
It's like just seeing Yabos does not instantly put me in a sexual arousal state. So I don't,
no, it's
I
not
don't
like I would be
necessarily like,
worried.
oh,
it would
okay,
just be,
well,
it would just be
this
weird that
character
I,
is doing something
yeah,
with
it
their
would just
shirt
be
off.
weird if I knew like what my sister Jabos look like, or you know, like
Yeah.
it's like that's kind of
That's Hollywood, baby.
That's just a little weird.
Yeah,
Sharknado gave me a boner.
Yeah.
you heard it here, folks. Yeah,
My
so
sister Sharknado bears all. in the movie.
Hitchcock definitely seemed like he was not afraid to quite literally abuse his actors in every sense of the word, which is not dope. Cooter of the Week.
I mean, yeah, the man wrote Psycho, or he directed
Yeah.
Psycho. He invented the slasher genre where young women get cut up by freakish nerd types, I guess, in his case. So,
Yeah.
hey, there's evidence. Lock this bitch up.
Actually, that's Peeping Tom. If you wanna, if you
I
wanna
don't
do
want
that.
Scream 6 taught us that.
Scream 6 taught us nothing.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, that's our Cooter of the Week for fucking sure. We are gonna forego hitting up what we've been watching this week since we're recording so far in advance, and also because of that, we're not gonna have any hotline screams for this week. So we're gonna round out the episode with Cooter of the Week. I guess, do you guys have any prompts you want to throw out there just for the fuck of it? If people call in over the week or two, we can always play them at a later date. But
I'd be curious to know like who else feels positively towards the birds and what it is they take from it, because I think there's some sound like reasoning going on with these guys. I don't think I can hold their points against them too much, even though I don't agree. And I just kind of like, I would just love a little bit more in my corner to back me up a little bit. So
Nope,
please
you
help
stand
me.
on your own.
That'd be great. Also, I just love to know like
Validate
if people
Randy.
are Hitchcock's directorial fans, not his cooterdom fans.
Yeah.
Call in and let us know what your favorite Hitchcock property is and why. If there's a sort of a hidden gem amongst his stuff that you would recommend, I'd love to hear that too.
right on. The movie we're going to be covering next week is going to be a classic Japanese horror movie. So I wanted to throw out, if you guys have any baller ass Japanese horror movies that maybe you think are underseen or something you haven't heard us talk about, call in and let us know what that is. Some spooky ass Japanese horror movies. Chime in. So yeah, next week we're going to be talking about 1998's Rinyu. So slam that into your
Um,
eyeballs. Watch that tape, and then 7 days later, die by laughter from hearing us talk about Ringu because it's so funny. Ha ha ha.
Practice your
Well
Japanese,
done.
Bob. You got a lot of
If
names to
that's the-
pronounce next week.
That's the level of humor we're expecting from this
Ha, ha, ha,
episode.
ha. Ha, ha, ha.
Ha, 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 ha.
Yeah. Check out Ringu. That's going to do it for us here at Straight Chilling. Hit us up on all those social media accounts. If you want to join in on the daily Slack channel conversations, just hit us up and I'll send you a link so you can do so. Hope everybody's having a lovely week. And until next time, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.
Hooray!